It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the 5 films that wrap up August 2006, August 25th to be exact. On today's show, we have Mark Wahlberg starring as the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback in a Disney sports movie, the follow-up for the Super Troopers gang, their first movie since The Dukes of Hazzard, Outcast starring in their first big-screen motion picture, beloved children's book comes to life on the big screen with How to Eat Fried Worms, and Alicia Cuthbert and Camilla Bell star in a new psychological thriller. But before we get to those movies, of course, let's talk about the biggest new release of the weekend, which is Mark Wahlberg starring as Vince Papale in Disney's Invincible. So this is based off of the sort of true story, I'll get to that in just a second, of a 30-year-old Vince Papale, played by Mark Wahlberg in the summer of 1976, who's having a tough run of luck. He's been working as a substitute teacher for 2 days of the week, and he just found out that his job has been eliminated because of budget cuts, and his wife gives up on him, saying he'll never amount to anything and asks for a divorce. He works as a part-time bartender and plays football with his friends, and when the new coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Dick Vermeil, played by Greg Kinnear, announces that he will be holding open tryouts for the team, Vic reluctantly decides to give it a try and becomes a quarterback in the NFL. And it's based on a true story, even though there's definitely a lot of different things that they take liberties with, if you will. For one thing, Vince Papale did start playing football in the Delaware County Rough Touch League in the late 60s before his semi-professional pro football career. Mark Wahlberg's actually shorter than Vince Papale is in real life when he played for the Eagles. He's closer to Papale's high school height. Papale's wife did leave him, leaving a similar note in the movie as he did here. That happened in 1971, though, 5 years before the events of the movie. And I'm reading this off Wikipedia, by the way. They portray Vince meeting Janet, who's played in this movie by Elizabeth Banks, before the tryouts. In reality, they were already married, and they actually had dated. Papale had actually dated and married his second wife around this movie's time frame, and he was divorced and met Janet after his Eagles career, and they actually got married in 1993. And there was an open tryout for Papale to go to before earning a spot on the Bell roster, which the filmmakers used as a model for the tryouts shown in the movie. And for the Eagles, Papale actually participated in a private workout that was by invitation only. In the opening of the movie, the Eagles had a 31-0 loss to the Cincinnati Bengals on December 7th, 1975. One of the fans makes a comment that the Eagles lost to a team worse than they were, even though the Bengals were 11-3 and were actually the wild card team in the AFC. And the game versus the New York Giants is depicted as being a close defensive struggle, when the Giants scoring first to take a 7-0 lead. The Eagles actually won pretty easily, 20-7. With the Giants not scoring until later in that game. And they talk about, they talk about all these different things. And bottom line, there is a lot of liberties taken with this movie. So that should be the first thing you should take from this particular film in general. But nevertheless, the movie's actually pretty damn good. I mean, this is a really well-made film. Like I said, it's a film that we've seen done to death before so many times. It's the typical underdog sports movie storyline, but an interesting story overall. Mark Wahlberg playing Vince Papale is very good in the movie. I think he does a very good job handling this role. Greg Kinnear playing Dick Vermeil, which is actually going to be the second time first of 2 times he plays him, because in the second time it's going to be when he plays him in the Kurt Warner movie American Underdog that comes out 15 years after this, which is also a pretty good movie too. It's a very good movie. It's a very gritty-looking movie. Like, it does feel like you're in the 1970s. So they did a pretty good job of making it seem like it took place in the 70s, even though this was filmed in the 2000s. And this director, Erickson Core, I've never heard of him before. I think he's a cinematographer for the most part. And I think he went back to doing cinematography after this movie, which is really weird, because it seems like this guy could have really had a future as a director. Actually, no, he did direct a couple of other movies. Point Break, the remake of Point Break, which was not very good. But he did do a good movie on Disney Plus with Willem Dafoe, Togo, which was actually a pretty damn good movie that came out a couple of years ago when Disney Plus started coming out. But Invincible, overall, is a really good movie. It's a really good underdog sports story. It's a very entertaining film. Showcases what Mark Wahlberg can do as a leading actor as a whole. We'll see him in a much bigger movie coming up in a couple weeks with The Departed, but this is a really good movie. It's one I definitely recommend checking out. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that's Broken Lizard's latest film, Beer Fest. Yeah, you thought the Dukes of Hazzard movie was one where it showed what happens when Broken Lizards go way too big. This one isn't as bad as The Dukes of Hazzard is, but yeah, it's definitely a movie where this is clearly a studio, more of a studio film than a Broken Lizard movie, and it's just Broken Lizard's name all over the film, even though they don't really, even though it doesn't have quite the same spark or feel as something like Super Troopers did or Club Dread even. No, this feels like a movie that was made solely after the success of The Dukes of Hazzard, and it was more of a studio film than actually a movie by these guys. And as the plot indicates here, you have a group of friends who go take on this big competition in Germany called Beer Fest. And you have these two brothers doing it to avenge their grandfather who had passed away. They travel to Munich to fulfill the family tradition, spreading the ashes of Johann during the Oktoberfest. And their contact brings them to a secret beer competition where they are offended by Baron Wolfgang von Wolfhausen and the German branch of their family that accuses their great-grandmother of being a prostitute and their grandfather of stealing an old recipe from the best beer in Germany. The two brothers return to the USA humiliated and decide to organize a beer team to dispute the next beer fest. They join 3 other people and train the year to participate in the competition, and of course leads to an epic competition between the underdogs and the champs of the beer fest. But yeah, you get the idea here, and yeah. We've seen this movie done way too many times before. Dodgeball, I think, pretty much is a lot of the inspiration taken from this movie in general. But this film, I remember seeing it. I was really excited for it because I like the Broken Lizard movies a lot. And yeah, I really didn't enjoy this movie all that much. It wasn't a bad movie per se. Sometimes there would be a good joke here and there, but yeah, it definitely felt like this was a film that was clearly made by the Broken Lizard guys post Dukes of Hazzard, not like the Super Troopers Broken Lizard. And it took them a long time to really get back to what made Broken Lizard really special, which is what happened later on with Super Troopers 2, which not a good sequel, but it definitely was a return to form for them. This definitely felt like a film that was a studio stipulated film. Like, this felt like a movie that they were kind of forced into making in general, and Warner Brothers had to come in and basically tell them what to do. At least that's what I got from it, per se. It's a film that doesn't really have a whole lot of great laughs overall to it. You can definitely tell there's much more of a bigger cast involved in here. You got Donald Sutherland, Cloris Leachman, Monique is in here, Will Forte, Nat Faxon, Willie Nelson has the cameo you see in the trailer. Some bigger names in this movie than the usual Broken Lizard film, and it just, I don't know. To me, it wasn't as funny as I think most people were expecting it to be. And yeah, it didn't really work for me. At least in my opinion, it really didn't. And it's kind of a shame because I was real looking forward to it. I thought it was going to be much more funnier, and it just really was not. It was a film that just kind of came and went, and quite frankly, it's not hard to see why. So, unfortunately, a disappointing recommendation for Beer Fest. So, if you want to even call that a recommendation. But with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie we have here, and that is Idlewild. Yeah, a movie that a lot of people honestly forgot about almost immediately after it came out, and it's kind of a shame, but at the same time, kind of right on that. This is Idlewild, which is of course the big screen debut for the hip hop duo of Outkast, Andre 3000 and Big Boy. Which is funny because in the same year, Andre 3000 would actually have his Cartoon Network show Class of 3000 around this time. And in this movie, it contrasts the group's hip-hop, funk, and soul sound against a story based on a juke joint in the fictional depiction era town of Idlewild, Georgia in 1935. And this is definitely a movie that is very much a style over substance movie. And this is a film that has some pretty incredible visuals. I mean, this movie is very visually pleasing to look at times, and you got a great cast that includes Terrence Howard, Paula Jai Parker, Paula Patton, Cicely Tyson, Ben Vereen, Patti LaBelle, Ving Rhames, Faison Love, Melinda Williams, Macy Gray. A lot of really good talent over the course of the film. Unfortunately, the script is a mess. It's a real sloppy film in terms of its script overall. The writing isn't really that strong overall. The characters are not that great. The visuals are what carry the film overall, and the musical numbers are nicely done, too. It's a very style over substance movie, so we really need to go into it knowing that you're not going to get a great story out of this, or really a lot of great characters overall, but it's gonna be a pretty-ass looking movie to look at. I mean, it is a really good, gorgeous-looking movie in terms of what they were able to do visual-wise, but other than that, though, the script really is the weak link of the film, and the characters are not the best well-written characters, even though you got these actors really trying their best to save whatever this movie can do. I can kind of understand why this movie has been largely forgotten over time, but at the same time, there are things about it that I would say are definitely worth watching, especially if you got a nice 4K television to watch this on. The movie looks incredible with its visuals overall. The songs are very good too. I mean, it's Outkast doing what they do best overall. I just wish that the story and the characters were much better written. It kind of reminds me a lot of what Prince's movies were after Purple Rain. I'm talking about Under the Cherry Moon and what was the other one? Graffiti Bridge. Like very visually pleasing movies to look at in terms of the visuals, but story and script wise, character wise, not so much. This one's not quite as bad as the latter Prince movies overall, but it's not a it's a mixed movie in my opinion. It's a movie where I would say if you're gonna watch it, you're gonna really appreciate the visuals and the music numbers. Everything else, not so much. Kind of a mixed opinion on this movie, but should be recognized for at least its impressive visuals overall. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next one we have here, and that is How to Eat Fried Worms. You know, there are some books out there, some beloved children's books that probably should have just stayed books overall, because if you're going to try to make a movie version out of it, you really, really need to make it not look as ewy and icky as it possibly could be. And sadly, How to Eat Fried Worms is definitely one of those books that probably should have just stayed as a book overall. So essentially, the plot of the movie is that during the first day of a new high school, a new kid in town squares off against a bully and winds up accepting a dare that could change the balance of power with his class. And the whole bet is that, you know, he can't eat, is like the bully bets that he couldn't eat a lot of worms. And so he basically decides to make a bet and, you know, have to eat them all, and you can't vomit in any way, shape, or form. So I guess it's kind of a fear factor for kids, I guess. But even then, like, it's a movie that's really hard to make as a universally crowd-pleasing kids movie. But this film just comes off as really an icky mess of a movie, and not even a good kind of a mess of a movie. Like, I don't even think the kids who like reading the books overall really want to see this made as a big screen motion picture, and it really doesn't work as a film overall. It has at least a little bit more of a hook than Hoot did, but even then, Hoot has a very bland storyline here. At least in this movie, they're trying to do something different. They're trying to do something that is a little bit more, I guess, adult, if you will, because these kids are eating worms, and they're coming up with all these different ways to, you know, the different ways to eat worms, and it's just, and it sadly alienates the audience of the movie overall, because, yeah, a movie like this isn't going to draw big audiences like the other movies that this company, Walden Media, have done. You know, this is the company that did Holes and Because of Winn-Dixie and you know, much more successful movies overall. And yeah, this one did not do so well, and it's kind of hard not to see why, because it's kind of easy not to see why, to see why it didn't do. Let me rephrase that. It's kind of easy to see why this movie didn't do so well, because, yeah, this is a film that is really, really disgusting, and it's hard to make a movie out of a book like this, because, yeah, how are you supposed to make a movie like this in real life and not make it seem like a film that's alienated towards one specific audience? I mean, you think you have to go the Diary of a Wimpy Kid animated route? Just make them into animated movies, and even then, when you do it that way, it probably still won't be as good, but at least it'll be much more tolerable than a live-action film can be. I guess to the film's credit, it's not bad. It's just uncomfortable to watch at times, to see this kid eat all these worms, and it's just like there's nothing appealing about it at all, and it's just like, yeah, I can't really get behind a movie like this, unfortunately. Even if I'm a fan of the books overall, I'd be like, yeah, this is really, really hard to make into a motion picture and try to sell as a live-action motion picture overall, and yeah, this one really fails to do that, unfortunately. So, yeah, a hard pass on How to Eat Fried Worms. So, with all that said, let us move on to the last one we have here, and that is Camilla Bell and Alicia Cuthbert starring in the thriller, The Quiet. Well, on the one hand, the movie did win me over by the fact that it uses STEM, the song from DJ Shadow, which I've talked about before on the show before. But unfortunately, I think that's just for the trailer only. But because the film itself is not as good as I thought it was going to be. This is directed by Jamie Babbitt, who did But I'm a Cheerleader with Natasha Lyonne back in 1999. Her second film as a director overall, and in this movie it focuses on Camilla Bell, who's a deaf-mute teenage orphan who's sent to live with her godparents. She soon becomes a sounding board for the family members who confess their darkest secrets to her, including the incestuous relationship between her godfather and his teenage daughter, played by Alicia Cuthbert. And it's definitely one of those movies that we talk about. Some of these movies every once in a while. The movie that's supposed to be like this sleazy, exploitive, psychological thriller that could work if it decided on which direction it wanted to go. Like, this is one of those movies where, you don't know if it wants to be taken seriously or it just wants, or does it want to be a black comedy. Like, it doesn't want to be like Pretty Persuasion from a couple of years ago. And unfortunately, the movie can't decide which direction it really wants to go, and I think that's really the big reason why this film fails miserably right out of the get-go. There's possibilities of what could be done with a story like this, but like I said, it's a movie that really has a hard time figuring out what kind of a story it wants to be and what direction does it want to go to. Does it want to be taken seriously? Does it want to be a black comedy? And unfortunately, it can't balance itself out as a whole, and I think the problem with this movie is that the thing about the movie But I'm a Cheerleader at least had an idea of what it was trying to be. It was a black comedy that was very much a satirical black comedy and knew exactly what it was trying to be. But this one, it just feels like they're just crossing way too many pathways of what they're trying to accomplish here. And you never get a real sense of what they're trying to do. Like, what's the end result here? What am I supposed to take away from this movie? And yeah, you could put as many sexy-looking teenage girls at the time as you want to, but if the movie isn't working, the movie ain't working. And sadly, the movie doesn't work as a whole. And it's just a shame because there's a lot of really good talent involved in here, I met Martin Donovan's also in here, Edie Falco, Sean Ashmore, Katie Mixon from Eastbound and Down. A lot of good talent involved in the movie, but unfortunately, the film just doesn't have an identity to it. It doesn't know which direction it wants to go. And because it can't figure it out before it's too late, we really don't have a whole lot to do as a whole with the film. Like, what am I supposed to take away from the movie in general? And unfortunately, the film suffers a lot because of the tonal shifts, and it doesn't know exactly what it wants to be or what the overall end result is supposed to be. And it just doesn't work as a film overall, and it's a real shame because there is a lot of potential here, but just bad execution overall, bad ideas of what the tone is supposed to be. A hard skip on this one, unfortunately, so you can skip the quiet. And so, with all that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and the next time we meet, we'll take a look at the first 4 movies of the month of September 2006, Labor Day weekend, with Jason Statham starring in the action comedy Crank. It's not really a comedy, but it can be seen as a dark black comedy as a whole. It's a movie that The Quiet probably should have been. We'll talk about Crank. We'll also talk about the So Bad It's Good movie, Nicolas Cage's remake of The Wicker Man, the dance film Crossover, and maybe one of the most mismarketed movies you'll ever see. Mike Judge's follow-up to Office Space's feature directorial follow-up to Office Space, Idiocracy. So we will take a look at all 4 of those movies. That will be coming up on tomorrow's show. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification button so you get updates on when the videos come out, because we post videos here every day, and that's how you get the information on when they come out. Now, with all that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.